meeting to order. I will now read the Indigenous land acknowledgements. On behalf of the board, I would like to acknowledge the land we are meeting on today is the traditional territory of many First Nations, including the Chippewas of Georgina Island and the Mississaugas of the Credit. These lands are now home to many diverse Indigenous people. We also acknowledge that York Region falls under Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Williams Treaties with several Mississauga Chippewas First Nations. Disclosure of interest. Any disclosure of interest? Kindly note there are no disclosures of interest. Confirmation of public minutes of February 23rd, 2022. Who would like to move that? Yes, Svank. And who would like to second that? Mayor Pellegrini, would you like to do that for me? Thank you so much. Any opposition? I see none, motion carries. We are now in presentations. And it's an update on the development of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan for York Region. The presentation is going to be made by Joseph Silva, Director, Strategies and Partnerships, Community and Health Services. Silva, welcome.
Thank you very much, Chair Bevilacqua. Good morning, members of the Police Services Board. I'm going to ask one of my colleagues to screen share, if that is okay, my presentation so that you can follow along. As the chair noted, my name is Joseph Silva, and I am the Director of Strategies and Partnerships in York Region's Community and Health Services Department. My portfolio includes social policy and community development, and this project falls under my purview. I am joined by a couple of staff members who I think are in the room, Lisa Alfieri-Sladen and Nathan Stern. Next slide, please. Today, I will provide an update on our work to develop the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan for York Region. Chief McSween and partners in York Regional Police have been instrumental in helping us with this work, and I will speak to that and other collaborations as part of my presentation. Next slide, please. Let me start with a quick overview of the provincially mandated requirements for developing a Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. Under the Police Services Act, regional and single-tier municipalities are required to prepare and adopt a community safety and well-being plan that identifies and prioritizes risks and contains strategies to reduce the incidence and severity of harm and victimization. The province has asked that plans focus on preventative and collaborative actions and leverage existing strengths and resources in our community. This work centers on upstream social development and prevention planning. So the blue and green rings in this diagram before you, which is the bullseye diagram provided by the province to guide this work. These upstream measures can enhance well-being and mitigate risks of harm and victimization. The downstream situations that require more costly interventions as issues escalate. Next slide, please. Development of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan has been underway over the last couple of years, including through this ongoing pandemic. Over time, we have been undertaking research and engagement with partners. This includes working with York Regional Police, local municipalities, school boards, community partners, and residents. We have also been receiving support from the Human Services Planning Board of York Region, which was appointed by York Regional Council to serve as the advisory committee for the plan. Chief McSween and Jennifer Fang both sit on the Human Services Planning Board and have provided excellent advice throughout the process. Along the way, we have been providing updates to York Regional Council and receiving valuable input on the shape and direction for the plan. The timeline on the slide notes these key milestones. I am pleased to report that we are on track to bring the plan to Regional Council this May for approval, followed by submission to the province. I do also want to note that while COVID-19 impacted the progress of our project, it also allowed us to leverage the pandemic response. It drew attention to the importance of collaborative tables to better understand issues, deepen our relationships with community, and be responsive to needs, particularly as we address the risks that have been exacerbated during this pandemic. Next slide, please. As we flesh out and finalize the plan, we know that the long-term vision for the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan will be naturally aligned with the region's vision of strong, caring, safe communities, as well as strategies and initiatives at the local municipal level. It also aligns very well with YRP's vision and priorities. We envision that the plan will have several key features. We are looking at an overall goal of supporting and enhancing safety and well-being through preventative, targeted, and community-driven actions. There will be a number of strategic objectives that will guide and propel this work, and we itemize them here based on what's emerging from our planning work. First, we envision bringing partners together and strengthening community capacity. Central to this will be the development of community action tables. These tables will bring together local municipalities, York Regional Police, school boards, and other partners. They will help build community capacity by developing and implementing locally driven initiatives in response to priority risks to community safety and well-being. Based on provincial guidance, we are not meant to reinvent the wheel, but build on the great work already happening within individual agencies, sectors, and organizations. But to leverage existing assets, communities need to have a better awareness of programs and services available to them. These gaps in service navigation and coordination are things that we have heard consistently. To help strengthen service and navigation, we are considering establishing situation tables, for example, focused on children, youth, and family issues. We would be working closely with York Regional Police, United Way, school boards and local municipalities, and others to establish and manage these tables. We know that this work could also support York Regional Police with respect to its priorities like mental well-being. I want to note that the plan will focus on communities that can benefit the most. In November of 2019, York Regional Council adopted a place-based approach to community safety and well-being planning, which means we get to focus on communities that can benefit the most from targeted planning and action. Implementing this place-based approach, staff used data and confirmed this through consultations, 4 focus areas under this first iteration of the plan, and I'll speak more to these areas shortly. The next set of actions under the plan focus on targeting priority risks and implementing preventative actions, again, to avoid more costly interventions down the road. The focus of the plan is on prevention, not response, in alignment with the provincial framework. The plan will target the priority risks of mental well-being, housing stability, and economic stability. We know that these risks have been exacerbated during the pandemic. We recognize that adequate resourcing is needed to set up the plan for success. We envision mobilizing resources, including funding, so that actions can be successfully implemented. For example, we have already worked with York Regional Police on joint funding applications to support this work, such as through the Crime Prevention Action Fund and Community Safety and Policing grants. Thank you, Chief McSween, for your support, and our thanks as well to Jeff Channel and Inspector Sarah Riddell for working with us on these opportunities. Lastly, we are looking at actions to achieve effective implementation of initiatives under the plan, as well as continuous improvement and successful administration of this work. We are looking at performance management, evaluation, and certainly continuous engagement. We will update Council and our partners on the progress, identify learnings, and explore opportunities to scale up initiatives in other parts of the region where possible and appropriate. Next slide, please. In implementing a place-based approach, this first iteration of the plan will focus on 4 areas: in Georgina, Newmarket, Richmond Hill, and Markham. We use data related to the social determinants of health, including police data, as well as tools such as the Ontario Marginalization Index that we use to construct the heat map that you see. These tools helped us identify the 4 focus areas for this first iteration of the plan. We also conducted deeper dives to identify and prioritize the top risks for these communities. South Central Markham, South Central Richmond Hill, and Central Newmarket each identified mental well-being and housing stability as their priorities, while Northern Georgina identified mental well-being and employment stability. Key to the implementation of our plan is the community action tables, as I noted before. These tables have established in each focus area and provide a platform to explore these risks further and develop local community actions to drive solutions to address these risks. I want to note that York Regional Police has been a terrific partner with district sergeants in the various districts participating on the respective community action table. And these are representatives from the number 1, 2, 3, and 5 districts. We anticipate York Regional Police playing an even stronger role moving forward as we roll out the plan, particularly as the community action table shift their focus from planning to implementation. Next slide, please. The tables have been working to develop possible short and long-term solutions to the priority risks. These initiatives will form part of the plan and will be included as a set of community identified and driven initiatives. So this table here just gives you a sense of the types of actions emerging from the tables. Next slide, please. In terms of implementation, place-based approaches require time and effort, and we can't do it alone. However, through this process, we have established partnerships to help us along the way. We envision the region will have a key role to play in stewarding the plan alongside other partners like York Regional Police and certainly local municipalities. We know that the plan will need to be a living document, so there will be opportunities to continue to develop, finesse, and prioritize these actions. We will be flexible. And as I noted, we envision seizing opportunities to scale up successful actions in other parts of the region. In terms of timing, we are looking at a 4-year implementation timeline, which aligns with what we know from the province at this point. Next slide, please. I've touched upon some of the ways that we have partnered with York Regional Police on this work, but I also want to note that York Regional Police has been a terrific partner through other forums. So for example, Chief McSween and Jennifer Fang sit on HSPB, as I said. Superintendent Ryan Hogan participates in our Community Partnership Council, which drives our newcomer strategy. He also co-chairs with me our Municipal Diversity and Inclusion Group. These are just some examples, and I'm sure I'm not doing justice to the breadth and depth of our connections. Next slide, please. In terms of next steps, we will be bringing forward the plan to York Regional Council in May. And along the way, we will be bringing it forward to York Human Services Planning Board this coming Friday. Once approved by Council, we will be submitting it to the province, and on we go for implementation. Next slide, please. Thank you very much for your time and attention. And I conclude my presentation with, once again, tremendous thank yous to you and to York Regional Police for your support. I welcome any questions and feedback you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a very thorough presentation. Are there any questions? No questions? Okay. As I stated, Mr. Silva, obviously the presentation was so thorough and you answered all the questions that the board may have had. I know that the board reads all the material prior to the presentation. And I just wanted to thank you and everyone involved in creating this report, because it gives us a good sense of where we're at. And I'm also going to ask the chief to say a few words now. Chief, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to as well echo your comments on a huge thank you to Joe and the entire team. They've done a tremendous job. This has been a heavy lift for a couple of years now. And, you know, when Joseph and I spoke before this presentation, obviously wanted to make sure our board was fully informed before it moved forward. And Joseph, you and the team have done a tremendous job. So thank you very much. And thanks for your partnership. You guys are terrific partners.
Thank you so much, Chief, for those comments. And I can tell you, Mr. Silva, that it's not lost on the board that, you know, presentations, you know, you see these slide presentations and words on a page and themes, but we know how much work goes into it. I mean, this is this is really, as I refer to, it's a labor of love, right? To provide this type of service, and this awareness that you've shared with us is extremely important. And I know that board members really appreciate it. And I also have a board member who would like to ask a question. Ms. Fang, go ahead.
Thank you, Mauricio. I actually just want to echo the sentiment, pass on my appreciation to Joseph and team. It's been a pleasure working with you all at the Human Service Planning Board. So look forward to this discussion on Friday again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Who would like to move the receipt of this presentation? Mayor Pellegrini, and who's going to help out the mayor? Okay, Ms. McCullough, thank you so much. All those in favor? Against? Motion carries. We have no deputations today, and we'll move to communications, 7.1 and 7.2. Does anyone else want to speak to these two? If not, we will move to receive them. On 7.1, Walter, would you like to receive? Would you like to move that, Mr. Pritchell? Thank you so much for doing that. What about Stephen Renat? Would you like to second that? Thank you so much. All those in favor? Against? Motion carries. 7.2, Chair Emerson, would you like to move that for me? Thank you very much for that. And who have we got here? Jennifer, would you like to second it? Thank you. All those in favor? Against? Motion carries. Now we move to consideration and adoption of reports. We're using consent agenda, as you all recall. So I'm going to pull one item, which is 8.1, financial reporting for the period ending December 31st, 2021. And now just raise your hand if you want to pull an item from 8.1 to 8.5. Mayor Pellegrini, please go ahead. I read your lips because I think you said 8.3, right?
8.2.
8.2. Okay, see, I think you said 8.2. No, I couldn't read your lips. So 8.2. Thank you for that, Mayor Pellegrini. Ms. Fang, you have your hand up.
8.4, please.
8.4. Okay. So basically the items that we have called are 8.1, 8.2, 8.4. And now I'm just going to ask somebody to move a motion to approve the remaining consent items. Mayor Pellegrini, Mr. Renat, thank you. All those in favor? Against? Motion carries. Okay. So let's start with 8.1. The financial reporting for the period ending December 31st, 2021. Can we have someone speak to this item?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will ask Jeff Channel to come on. Hi, Jeff. Jeff will just provide a briefing to the board and answer any questions we have here. Jeff, over to you.
Thank you.
Welcome,
and,
Jeff.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to the board. So this report is the full year end current year interim financial reports unaudited for December 31st. And previous guidance to the board during the year indicated that we would end in a year-end deficit projection in the range between $2 and $3 million. So I'm pleased to say that this report shows that we are on budget with a surplus of $39. That was a designed number, and I just wanted to explain the impact of the Safe Restart funding was the main driver. So York Region has received Safe Restart money from the province in 2020 as well as in 2021. At the end of 2020, several police services arranged these entries directly funding the police service rather than letting the deficit ride and then fill the funding at the municipal level. We raised this issue with Acting Treasurer Kelly Struby, and based on our strong partnership with Office of the Budget and Controllership Office, she approved a dedicated draw to YRP of $1.2 million. And this was the main driver for why we ended up on budget this year. And there was actually this was designed to actually come in exactly on budget. There was a late entry for $39, which is why you see the small residual. I'll just move over to the schedule of year-end variances to budget. And this is a summary that we show every year end, and it's meant to summarize why we have surplus or deficits. The format of the report, again, it's only once a year, and it's to show offsets within major components. And I want to start at the top of the schedule around wages. And there are actually 5 items that are driving our wage deficit this year. We're at 102% spent on wages, a $4 million deficit on wages. One of the primary ones is the pressure from backfilling long-term leaves. And this is the larger volume of WSIB members, LTD members that we are seeing higher than budget. There was a $1.36 million deficit by backfilling that process. We did have some paid duty salary pressures, but that's offset by revenues. And also retiree benefits as were higher than expected by about $2.5 million. The other items, we had some favorable staffing mix variances. This is around supervision, fewer supervisors than we originally outlooked, as well as some overtime variances. So a $4 million deficit on the wage line, that's 102% spent on wages. We did see offsets and indirectly controlled expenditures. These are with our partnership with York Region or other items that aren't directly controlled. And you'll see, again, this $500,000 favorable variance is mostly driven by fuel items and fuel savings last year. The directly controlled expenditures, a big piece of this savings was arranged by the ECT. They called for about $1.1 million in fewer spending as part of a pandemic relief effort. We ended up with $1.7 million of savings, and there's a list of items listed on the chart. And finally, through revenues, again, we had savings of about $1.7 million. Again, we were below unfavorable due to COVID impacts of about $2.1 million, but there were other savings that were very favorable in revenues. And again, the Safe Restart money shows at about $1.2 million there. We did have favorable paid duty revenues. Again, this is immunization clinic, pandemic related one-time revenues, I'll call it, for $1.1 million, as well as secondments and again, contributions from the cannabis reserve. So again, that is the operating overview. As we move over to the capital impacts, YRP was 65.5% spent on capital last year. There's notes in the financial statements that have been added to the report, and that outlines the key information from the schedule. And they include that $6.1 million of the spending. It was rebudgeted through the most recent budget process from 2021 to 2022, as well as a number of other delays, some of them vendor related due to the pandemic. From the schedule of reserve balances, all 4 of the reserves, they are on track to meet the funding and expectations in 2021. And finally, I'd like to just comment that in June, at the June 22nd meeting, that you should expect to see the audited financial statements outcomes. One of the items that we have been talking with Controllership Office about is a prior period revenue adjustment, but that won't change the findings for 2021, that we were on budget with the exception of this post-period benefit adjustment that we're expecting to do. So with that update, Chair, I'm certainly available for any questions that you or the board may have.
Well, thank you, Mr. Channel. No, it's not every day you can declare surplus. Doesn't matter how much. Any questions or any comments? Actually, Ms. Fang, go ahead.
Thank you, Jeff. I have a couple questions, and I'll go by slide number, so hopefully it's easier. My first one is on page 60, which is the capital spending table. And I'm just wondering, for those couple ones that are the project designated for the year of 2021, and we've ended the year without spending to close to 100%, and I understand the delays due to pandemic and other factors. So are those mostly will be reclassified into 2022 capital spending project, or some of them we just over budgeted, perhaps we don't need to spend up to that level. So the examples I look at it has renovation, IT infrastructure, and business intelligence. They are all kind of in the 50, 60s, and 20% range.
Yeah, thank you. And through you, Chair, to the board. Each of the items where projects are stated to close in 2021, they are in fact closed projects. So the only rebudgeting has already occurred through the budget process. There's not anything new. However, of the 2022 funds that you've just approved last fall, that can be rebudgeted, and we would bring that forward to council for their approval, but also through to the board through these quarterly reportings to notify you of any changes that we might want to make. So of the three examples, all three of these are closed projects.
Okay, so they are closed. So when we budgeted, we just over budget them very significantly then. Okay, great, thank you. And then next one is on slide 66, or page 66, I should say. It's the pandemic impact. And I'm just wondering, I think the pandemic impact for our operation, it's more than the 200,000. The reason I'm saying that is I'm wondering the pay duty expenses that would be incremental. Without the pandemic, we won't have these pay duty officers, thus the additional charges on running the clinics, right? So I'm wondering why that item is not included in the incremental analysis of the COVID impact.
Thank you. And again, Chair, through you, immunization was one of the factors around the pay duty. It's the main factor, but it's not the only factor. I think about 60% of that pay duty revenue increase was due to immunization. So that's why we listed it in the report. But right, you are. We could have segregated that out. We didn't for the purposes of this reporting.
Okay, yeah. And the next one is on page 68. So I'm just looking at some of the major items. For example, the retiree benefits expense this year, as you mentioned, it's one of the significant factors driving the payroll overage. And what's the main reason causing this retiree benefit, like 2 million over? Is that we have a wave of retirement last year, or just some of the benefits being expensed significantly?
Yeah, thank you again through you, Chair. We're in discussions right now with Office of the Budget around our benefit rates in order to establish the 2023 budget. A year ago, when we were establishing the 2021 budget, we were in discussions about moving those retiree benefits. There are two different treatments, in fact. So York Regional Police has a treatment that differs from York Region. YRP's treatment is to budget for each of them separately, the retiree group separately, whereas York Region combines the benefit rates amongst all employees. So we were transitioning to move to the York Region approach, didn't make it this year, and that's partially the reason why we showed this large variance on that line item.
So this is an anomaly year.
I would say that it's probably a one-time item, and that we plan to have it fixed for the 2023 process, and I look forward to bringing that through to you in the fall.
Okay, great. And then a couple other items of interest, I guess. Our investigation expense, I noticed that we have several joint investigation projects, and the labor related expenses in the people cost part, but there's also underneath the expense that's also like 750,000 over. So besides the main people related expense for the investigation work, what are the other expenses included that's caused the overage?
Oh, thank you, Ms. Feng. And through you, Chair, I'd like to answer that question in the private session if I could. There are some operational answers there, and I could probably ask Deputy Bigora to assist with that as well, if that's agreeable to you, Chair.
Sure, that's fair, no problem.
Yes, sure.
And then my last one is on the page 70. And I'm wondering the reserves, if we do not draw upon the additional reserve this year, then we won't have the minor surplus or on budget. Is that right?
Yeah, so thank you. And through you, Chair, the conditions for drawing from reserve is that we have an unbudgeted pressure related to the legalization of cannabis. And that's exactly what happened. We had investigations that led us to grow ops. And that, again, that was the main purpose for the draw. I think that you're correct in saying that that there could have been a deficit without that draw. I think that that's a correct assumption.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Ms. Fang. And I don't see anyone with their hands up, so no further questions. So I'll get Ms. Fang, you can move that, please. And Mr. Percher, would you like to second that? Thank you. All those in favor? Against? Motion carries. Item 8.2, installations of radio communications towers.
Mr. Chairman, just a very quick question. On table 1, there's a number of tenants. I wanted to know if they were all on one co-located tower or if there's numerous towers that York Region Police utilize.
So Chief, I can answer that question, and through you, Chair, they're on multiple. So we have 4 guide towers and they're on multiple locations. They're not just on one.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pellegrini, would you like to move that? Thank you. Chair Emerson, would you like to second that? Thank you so much. All those in favor? Against? Motion carries. Now we move to item 8.4.
Thank you.
Yes,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair. So was there a question on 8.4?
Yes, there was a, I think Ms. Fang, you called it, so please
Yes,
go ahead.
yes. Oh, just a quick question. In the conclusion, it says we investigated 1,325 missing people cases this year and then 1,255 cases last year. Is there going to be a report on the outcome?
Generally, no. There's not a report to the board on the outcome of missing persons because for the most part, most missing people are just found. And but there are from time to time operational matters that continue on, whether it's an abduction case or whatnot. From an operational perspective, that we will continue to investigate. So this was just a bit of an overview of how many missing people we investigate, but it doesn't specifically speak to this report because this report is talking more about the types of activities we can engage in under the Missing Persons Act to actually help us solve these missing people cases. And it's urgent situations. So we're really talking about the more serious ones. For the most part, most missing persons cases are solved quite quickly. Sometimes they take a week, sometimes they're runaways, and each one stands on its own merit. So generally, we have not brought to the board because it's a day-to-day operational matter. I mean, obviously, if there's a long-term missing person case that we're working on that has implications, and I'll just say, a more serious type of case, if it's worthy of bringing to the board's attention, knowing that it's going to find its way out into the media, I would definitely be bringing that to the board through the chair and vice chair, and in that way, like I normally would. So,
Great. So just is it fair to say over 90% of the missing person cases we investigated generally result into the good outcome of people being found?
well, I wouldn't want to put a number on it because it's a fluid number, because every year those numbers do change. But I would say a very high percentage of all of our missing people are found.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Thank you so much, Ms. Fang. Thanks, Chief. Ms. Fang, would you like to move motion, please? Thank you. Ms. McCullough, would you like to second that? Thank you very much. All those in favor? Against? Motion carries. So we now move to unfinished business update on the anti-Black racism building community trust committee. I'll defer now to the executive director, Mafalda Avellino. Mafalda, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everyone. As the board is aware, the committee recently engaged Professor Owusu Bempah as its consultant. He's a faculty member at the University of Toronto and has extensive experience working with law enforcement and police agencies to address equity and diversity issues within the policing structure. So we've been working closely with Professor Owusu Bempah. We also have a very good work plan in place and are in the process of collecting data and information at this time. We will seek the support of York Regional Police in the coming weeks for gathering data and information to support our review. So we look forward to meeting with the chief as well and the executive officer who will hopefully support our process. And I'd like to recognize as well board members McCullough and Purchell, who, and along with all the other members in our committee, we've been meeting weekly now for some time and bi-weekly as well. So they've allocated a lot of their time and hard work and guidance and insight into this process. So we're moving ahead with this, and we anticipate a report to the board in June. And unless somebody has any questions or comments.
We'll thank you for that report. We'll get to Chief. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Thank you, Mafalda, for the report. I just want to make sure, and yes, we will be discussing with both you and, well, you and likely the chair, vice chair at some point, but the alignment of, and I'd mentioned this before, of your consultant and ours will be extremely important as we move forward. So it will be important to connect yours with Dr. Shaheen Azmi here, who's working here at YRP. So those are my only comments. I just wanted to make sure we are collectively moving forward on this extremely important issue. So, and thank you for all the work that's been done at the board level on this matter as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Chief, and Mafalda, thank you so much for the update. An important area that, Chief, we know we take very seriously, and a lot of work has been done and more work will continue to be done because it's an area that really requires a lot of our attention. And I'm glad that that we've given this type of focus to this issue. I'm going to, Ms. McCullough, would you like to move receipt of the verbal update? Thank you. And Ms. Fang, would you like to second that? Thank you. All those in favor? Against? Motion carries. Any other business? Yes, Chair Emerson, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Correct me if I'm wrong, but did we ever do an opening of the station in Newmarket? I think you had a date and then we had to defer it. Are we going to do that opening? I haven't been over to see the facility yet, but have we got something planned since we're about out a little bit more now than they have been in the last little while? I know it's still muddy in that, but I mean, I'm just wondering whether we're going to do an opening.
Through you, Chair. Yes, Mr. Emerson, we are going to do an opening. We'll be engaging with Karen Richards and the team to plan that again or replan that, because we did have a plan in place, and obviously through COVID we had to delay it. But there is a plan to invite, have some speakers, and do a formal opening of that building. Yes.
Good. Thank you.
And by all means, to any board member now, since we are open, if anyone wishes a tour of that building, please let Al know, the executive officer, and or myself, and we'll make arrangements to have that. It's a fantastic building, and I think you'll be really impressed. Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Chair Emerson, for bringing that up. And you also heard the open invitation by the chief, so hopefully we'll take him up on it to see the type of investments that we're making to make our community safe. I'm going to ask for someone to move a motion to convene in private session for the purpose of considering confidential items pertaining to legal and personnel matters in accordance with Section 35(4) of the Police Services Act. Who would like to move that? Thank you, Mayor Pellegrini.
Mr. Renaud, thank you so much. All those in favor, against, motion carries. Thank you. We'll move into private in a few minutes.